Hey guys, this is Team Simply My At here, bringing you a discussion about Gozen match versus Rivalry of Warlords.
So, this will be our first installment on a recurring segment that we'll do where we discuss two cards, maybe multiple ones, and we'll talk about the positives and negatives, and sometimes give a suggestion on what we think you're going to run. So, the first, what we're going to talk about is Rivalry of Warlords versus Gozen match. Two of what I personally think are some of the most effective side deck cards of this format. Would you like to introduce the differences?
So, Gozen match reads, each player sends monsters they control the graveyard until they each only control monsters of only one attribute. You can't control monsters of different attributes. So that's the top right symbol.
That is the attribute.
So the light, dark, wind, that stuff. And then Rivalry of Warlords is each player can only control one type of monsters and send everything else.
Very.
Yeah. And then so we're going to have to keep a tally here of which, we're going to write down the names of which decks each one hurts more. And if it's a tie, got a tie category.
So first, I thought it would be good to talk a little bit about just some of the rulings for each, because I played a Dino Rabbit player at locals, and he just really wasn't sure what the cards did, or like some of the rulings, and they can be a little complex. So when one of these is flipped up, the player, if they have, so let's just use Gozen for example, if they have multiple attributes, the person must immediately select one to be sent to the graveyard. That's important. It's sent, not destroy. So it's just sent. And then as long as you have that attribute on the field, you cannot summon a monster of a different attribute or attempt to summon a monster of a different attribute. So like you cannot...
Dino Rabbit's really popular. Their dinos are all earth, but then their evils, the Lagia and Dolka, are fire. So you can't go into them, even though you would end up having...
If you have, let's say, two earth monsters, or if you have two light monsters, you cannot exceed into anything but light. Same with synchros. You can't, even if after resolution those monsters would be gone, you can't attempt to summon something with a different attribute. Another important thing is you can't use Lance or something to save your monsters, because it doesn't affect the cards. It puts a condition on the player. So you can't like Lance one of your monsters to save it for the turn. And then also, so like let's say if you have light monsters and then your monsters are cleared of the field, you're not restricted to light still. You can then reset, like
change.
Resets.
Yep.
And then another one is if you have monsters of a certain attribute, you can still set monsters of the other attribute. However, the moment they're flip face up, they are then sent. They are immediately sent to the graveyard.
Is it so you be able to pick, or the one that got flipped up sent?
It's the one that gets flipped up, because this is the one that is on the field is currently occupying the Gozen. This is your select attribute, and so then when this gets flipped up, you don't get to re-choose. The one that then violates it then gets sent. And so this is important, because if it gets attacked, this is treated as being sent to the graveyard by Gozen, not by effect. So you can't like set a Sanguine per se, and then if they attack Sanguine, you don't get the let's say Mystic Tomato. You don't get the effect of Mystic Tomato because that has to be destroyed by battle, and it wasn't destroyed by battle, it was sent by Gozen effect.
Would the attack re-go?
No, because it's during damage calculation it's flipped up, so you don't get a re-attack.
But would Sanguine get its effect though?
Yes.
Yeah, Sanguine, because that's not destroyed by battle. So first I want to talk about a little bit, the main thing that you should decide on which one of these two to use is first and foremost, one, whether your deck can handle either, and then which one you would rather, I guess, either hurts you less or doesn't hurt you at all. So I'll use my deck for an example. I use worms. So all my worms are light reptile types. And so you might think, oh, that's great to use attributes or to use types. But if I restrict myself to the type reptiles, that means I can't use something like a Thunder King. I can't exceed into a Shockmaster, Utopia, or Papilloperative. So in this case, I choose light because that allows me to use a lot of tech cards and exceeds. But in certain cases, like the first deck we'll talk about, which is 6 Sams, it's good to go into attributes.
6 Sams, they're all warriors. But there's a little bit of variety in the attribute, with most of them being earth, but you have your wind, which is Kageki, and then you have your...
More importantly, Shien.
Shien is dark. Yeah. So when you get out your Kagemusha, which is an Earth, you can never go into Shien. Or, let's see.
You just have to go into the Naturias, basically.
Yeah, then you're
So
stuck
it's one of
with
those things. Rivalry stops them from going into the Naturias, but Gozen stops them from going into Shien, as well as summoning Kaigeki. And then I think Iroh is Iroh's dark. Well, you can go Kizan.
Sorry.
So basically, for this one, we're going to put that Gozen hurts 6 Sams more. In that same vein, we're going to talk about Heroes. Heroes is pretty obviously more affected by Gozen, because with Heroes, I mean, they have a lot of different types of attributes. I mean, you have Bubble Man, Stratos, Shining.
Right.
They're all warriors. I mean, it's warriors, then fusing into more warriors. While Gozen, meanwhile, shuts down the wide variety of attributes. So that's another one that Gozen hits more. Some decks that... well, next we'll talk about the most prevalent deck this meta, which is Windups. You want to talk about Windups?
They have they're pretty wide variety in both. So like both Rivalry and Gozen are going to hit them pretty bad.
Yep. So we're going to put that as a tie. I mean, both of them get really hurt because they have Spellcaster, they have Machine.
They have Water Sharks, and then Earth Magicians.
The only thing is that all the Wind-Up XC's monsters are machine monsters.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
So in that one, I mean, Windups, no matter which one you play, Windups is one of the best decks to side these in. I really like siding in Gozen against 6 Sams. It stops Shien and a lot of other things. So we'll talk about one of Ramen Noodle's decks and one of the upcoming new ones, Mermails. Now, every Mermail card is water, so Gozen does nothing. However, they're split up between...
So you have your fish, and you have aquas, and you have sea serpents. And they're all spread around, because you actually use a combination of, so you have mermails, Atlanteans, and, your Gen X, and they're all different. Even within mermails, there's 2 different ones. So
this is one case Rivalry hurts more. Although I feel like you can kind of play around a Rivalry.
Yes.
So, because, I mean, a lot of them, a lot of the Atlanteans, they just get sent to the graveyard. So I wouldn't recommend siding either of these in against a Mermail deck.
There are better options. Yes.
Another one of the big decks is Dino Rabbits. Another deck that these are really great to side against. What Rivalry stops, they both stop basically the chain, we'll call it. So, because from Rabbit, with Gozen, you can still go Rabbit into Sabersaurus because they're both Earth, but then the only things that you can go into would be like a Gemnite Pearl, because they'd have to all be Earth. Meanwhile, Rivalry stops you going from Rabbit into anything. So, we're going to put this down as a tie. I mean, I guess technically Rivalry will hurt a little bit more, but they're both to the point where...
Shuts down their deck, the point of their deck.
If you can go, if they can go into Rabbit and then 2 Sabersaurus, but can't go into anything else, then that's still just as good. So technically it's a tie, maybe a slight edge to Rivalry, but for all intent and purposes, it's a tie.
Other side.
Oops, my bad.
So, and then 2 other decks, Insectors, Dark Worlds, does nothing.
They're all the same type, all the same attribute.
So, for those are 2 more ties, so we'll put those down. Those, obviously, never sided against. Talk about another one of Ramen Noodle's decks, Chaos Dragons.
So Chaos Dragons, you have 2 attributes, light and dark. And then, so, that one you pick, essentially what happens is, Gozen match, you have to pick between your Red Eyes or your Light Pulsars.
And then Rivalry, you have to choose between your Light Sworns or your Tour Guides and your
I would say,
Red Eyes.
Yeah.
I'd say Gozen more, just because that stops the Red Eyes Light Pulsar soft loop. And that, I think, is more important than them having to choose between their Dragons or their Light Sworns. Because Rivalry, if they get out, their Red Eyes and, their Dark Flares and their Light Pulsar or even Dad, this does nothing. Like, you are still screwed. Yeah. Meanwhile, Gozen stops, the Red Eyes.
Gozen will stop, the point of the deck, whereas Rivalry just makes it harder to... You have to clear your field before you can start it. But,
so, we'll give another one to Gozen. What other decks are big?
What other decks?
Agents.
Yeah, agents. Agents are all light. They're all fairies. Yeah, it doesn't really hurt them either.
Hatteras, our agent expert, do you have any comment on the effects of agents?
No, not particularly. I haven't played them in a while.
Yeah. Karkuri, Girgias.
Girgia.
Yes,
Neither. They're all machine.
Yeah.
They're all earth. Don't side it against them.
Yeah.
What else, man? I'm surprised we have so many of these meta decks. So, as I said, the worms. The worms are more affected by rivalry. We're going to put those down here. Even though they're not really, I wouldn't bother siding them against worms. Because, I mean...
They're not going to have huge...
If I can't summon Thunder King, that's okay. I can still... So, it's one of these. I mean, the first, more so... So here's the list. More so than even going by this list, first and foremost, decide, one, whether or not you can support either of these as a side deck choice. I wouldn't main either of these. Even in a deck like mine, which, is not hurt by Gozen one bit, I wouldn't main it because it's essentially a pointless card if you play against, an Inzectors, a Dark World, an Agent, or a Girgia. So the first thing you need to look at is which of these are you hurt by, which one can you afford to run most, and then I would say if it's a tie between all of those, I would pick Gozen, just because, the 6 Sam Heroes, Chaos Dragons, and then it still hurts Dino Rabbits and Windups. Well, with Rivalry, Mermails is really the only main deck that it hurts more. I mean, Dino Rabbit a little bit. But I just feel, 6 Sam's Heroes, Chaos Dragons, it'll shut those decks a lot more than Mermails, which can play around it, so.
And you can also, if you put in the Macrocosmos or D-Fissure, then you get even more. So those 4, 5, 6 cards on your side deck, you get pretty much half, if not more.
That's true. I mean, Chaos Dragons, and especially Mermails, if you're a deck that can support setting D-Fissure, side the hell out of D-Fissure for these decks. For something like 6 Sams or Heroes, it's hard unless you're doing an anti-spam card, like a Fossil Dyna, another card that we'll probably talk about sometime. It's hard to kind of shut, a Heroes or 6 Sams down in terms of side decking. And, these are your best options, so that's why Gozen is great to fit in. Throw in a Gozen and a D-Fissure, and you can have a good side deck against Chaos Dragons, Heroes, 6 Sams, Windups, Mermails, Dino Rabbits. That's a great place to start. If your deck can support it. If you're a Chaos Dragons player, you can't run those defenses.
Good idea.
So, these are our opinions. Of course, if you disagree, you can leave us a comment and we'll discuss further. These are just our opinions. We like to think we have some good facts, but...
talk about more decks in the comments, too.
Yeah, and then keep on the lookout for next ones. I think a next good one to do might be Starlight Road versus Huge Revolution. I think we can get some interesting talks about that one. So,
That's pretty good.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye.